everybody again. This is Steven. Today I will cover some of the creatures that came in the Masters of the Universe Classics line, but I'm also, after that, planning to show you, as a part of this video, again some of the creatures that would blend in with the Masters, and one of those creatures is actually from the 2000X Masters of the Universe line that does fit with the Classics. But one thing at a time. Let's start with the actual creatures for the bad guys from the Classics line. So first one here that we have is Griffin. Griffin did not really show up in the Filmation cartoons, but he was rather frequent, showing up in the 2000X Masters of the Universe cartoon series. It's one of the creatures that's controlled by Beastmen, and as you can tell, Griffin is a sort of a strange creature. It sort of has a body of a cat, but has a face of an eagle, with two eyes on each side, and an enormous beak that has articulation, so it can be opened pretty wide and then closed as well. He has the wings, so he can fly. He has bird claws on his feet, and he has a tail and a big saddle. Now the body and the saddle pretty much are the molds from either Panther or Battlecat, and the wings are from Swiftwind. So that's pretty much how this, by reusing the parts, how this creature was created. So the wings are articulated, so are the legs and the tail and the head that can move left to right. The jaws can open, the beak can open, and the wings can go up or down as well, so there is movements in the wings. It can sort of imitate like he's flying. And I'll show you. Now some people are trying to army build these, so there is a purpose to that. And in the cartoon you would usually see up to 3 of these. Skeletor riding one and 2 of his evil warriors riding one each. So in this case, let's just use one of the bad guys to put him on top. And in this case that will be Stinkor. They usually fit pretty well on this. The only complaint I sometimes have is that the feet go a little bit weird on the sides once you put them on top of the saddle, but in reality it's not such a bad fit, as you can tell. So the legs are a little bit too much apart, however, but if you can somehow fix it, if you guys can fix them in such a way that they actually fit snugly, then it should be fine. So yeah, this is how it looks when Stinkor is sitting on top of it. So that would be Griffin. He was an oversized figure due to its size and such. But of course that wasn't the only creature that was released back in the day. Another one that came out is based specifically on the Filmation appearance, but it did have an appearance in the 2000X cartoon series as well, and that would be the Shadow Beast. Now these things look like oversized gorillas, and they have one horn in the middle of the forehead. So they come with a weapon, this enormous spiked club, and they have articulation, so their arms can move, and their legs as well. Their legs move sideways, by the way, and then the feet go left to the right movement. There is movement in the shoulders. The shoulders are ball jointed, and they can move as well on their elbow. There is articulation on the elbows as well, and on the head. The head can be removed. Now the only problem is that this particular club is so heavy that it doesn't really stay very firmly in the hand, and it's kind of overweight, so it's kind of easily falling right out of the hand there. But what do you call it? The only way to do it is to maybe just use one of those see-through rubber bands to simply tie it around the hand, and then he will hopefully keep it in a firm grip. On the other hand, over here, the club could fit, but again it's not very tight fit, unfortunately, because again for the same reason that the club is too heavy and the grip of the hand is not molded in a very good way. But these are usually used as army builders, yet again. So it came during the early years of the Masters of the Universe classics. So usually it's treated as an army builder. Now the next one I have here is Gygor. Gygor never existed in the vintage line, and he practically never had a toy until now. So he did came out in the classics, and he's the creature that's under Skeletor. Usually in the old sketches he was presented as if the Beastman is riding on top of him, or Skeletor or whomever. I think there was even a drawing where he's being ridden by He-Man. I cannot specifically remember, but he is definitely on the side of the bad guys, and his appearance is kind of strange because this helmet he's wearing, which is by the way removable, the helmet reminds me a lot of the Darth Vader because of the shape of it. As you can tell, he's practically just a yellow and green gorilla underneath it all. His cape and the belt can be removed so that he can be displayed without all this armory, including these arm pads and leg pads. That can all be removed. He came with one weapon only, which is this enormous battle axe. And unlike Shadow Beast, he can hold onto this axe pretty well, and it won't really fall out or anything. So he has articulation, which is pretty much the same kind of articulation that you see in Shadow Beast, with the arms and legs and so forth. And I would say it's the same body mold except the head, of course. Same body mold as the Shadow Beast as well. So in this case he is potentially again an army builder, although I have not really seen a lot of people having a large number of these. Usually people only go for one. Now many people don't even have a slightest idea who this character is, so that was probably one of the turning off points for some collectors. I only got familiar with it because I read the history of the Masters of the Universe, so I know that he was considered for the vintage line long ago, and there was a sketch of him, but of course he never made it. But now, to mark that occasion that he's practically part of He-Man history and Masters of the Universe, then he was made for the very first time into an action figure. So he's not really bad, not by any means. He has nice bright yellow color and some green in there too. And he is quite big compared to the 6-inch. So yes, he's a welcome addition to the line. And just to show you what I mean about them pretty much sharing the same body type, I'll just show you the two of them side by side here. So we have Gygor and a Shadow Beast. Definitely the body mold is the same, only the heads are different, and of course the hands and the color scheme too, and of course the feet. But other than that, they look pretty much exactly the same. Just the one is the difference being the color. But yeah, so these guys are pretty neat for the monster building armies. Now this other fellow is an extremely large one, and I hope he fits on the camera here. That's Megator. Now of course you're wondering who the heck is Megator, for those of you who are not familiar with him. Now Megator is a character that was created for the end of the old vintage He-Man line in the 1980s. So he came out around 1986, 1987, when the toy line itself was already coming to an end. And he was specifically only available at some countries in Western Europe, such as Italy, Spain, France, Germany. But from what I understand, he was never available in North America, for example. He came out with another giant called Titus. Now Megator is on the side of the bad guys, and Titus is on the side of the good guys in the time of pre-Eternia. So Megator here is made to look exactly like his vintage counterpart, with only one major difference. Actually, two differences. The vintage Megator is at least 2 or 3 inches taller in size than, or even actually 4 inches taller than the classics one. And of course, the vintage one had the real rooted hair instead of a molded plastic one. So those are the only two differences, but aside from that, they look exactly the same, and they came with the same weapon. In this case, that would be this mace chain bolt. And his armor can be removed, and he has articulation which is pretty much exactly the same as in regular 6-inch figures, with only one small difference. The feet, for example, the ankles, do not have any articulation. And also, the other thing is he cannot do a split with his legs due to the hard plastic furry bands he has. But he does have a movement in the waistline as well. The head is not possible to move due to the fact that he has the hard plastic molded hair, and that kind of impedes the movement of the head from left to right. And the other giants in this series, such as Procrustes and Titus, are pretty much the same size as him, but they come with different accessories, and of course their histories, their biography is different. But Megator here, according to some of the latest interpretations, he did fight in the pre-Eternia times, and he was specifically fighting on the side of King Hiss and the Snake Man. He did come with an extra head, which does not exist with the vintage figure. The extra head, which I don't have here at the moment because I'm sort of keeping it on the sidelines. The vintage head of Megator looked pretty much, as I said, as this one, but there is an extra head for Megator here, and that extra head looks like a zombified version of the same face. And instead of the plastic hair, there is only few strands of rooted hair molded into the head. So, according to the biography, when Megator died on the Ultimate Battleground, the first Ultimate Battleground, way before He-Man, he was resurrected centuries later to fight once more for the bad guys. And when he was resurrected, he came to life looking like a zombie. He wasn't like this, with this kind of face anymore. He's practically, the way it seems to me, in a sort of an oversized giant or a giant troll of a sort. So some people try to build him into an army of these guys, and some old drawings for the never realized Powers of Grayskull toy line in the vintage line that was supposed to be available shows in the drawings more than one Megator fighting the first defenders of Eternia eons ago. So he can be displayed either with a zombified head or with this regular one, and he's again quite an interesting and welcome addition to any Masters of the Universe line dioramas or displays. Now, not many people were interested in this guy because they simply don't know who he is, and they're not familiar with the vintage version whatsoever, so that's why there were many times when people simply passed on him and they were not interested to get one. Same went for Titus, because these two characters are just known to a selected few collectors out there. But I think they don't look so bad. They're about 12 inches tall, and they look pretty good. They're sort of like your typical rotocast figures. So that would be as far as Megator goes. Actually, before I put him aside, I should probably show you a figure of regular size compared to him. So here we go. We have Stinkor standing right next to him, so you can sort of tell the size difference between them. Now, aside from Megator, the only other characters I want to talk about is the ones that I mentioned earlier that would blend in with the Masters, so I'm kind of continuing with that now. This fellow, who is quite heavy by the way and very chunky, This is a fella from Hellboy movie part 2, Hellboy versus the Golden Army, and this guy is called Mr. Wink. That's all I really know about him. He was one of the bad guys in part 2, and he fits pretty well with the Masters because he can pass as a sort of a monster servant of any of the bad guys, starting from Count Mars or whomever. And he's quite taller than your 6-inch figure, and he's quite heavy as well. And that's why I like to display him. He looks like he could easily fit with the world of Eternia, pretty much. And he's very menacing looking, so I'd like to display him with He-Man. Now, this last piece I saved for last because it's an enormous piece. If you guys are familiar with the Battle Bones, now who or what is Battle Bones? Battle Bones is a dinosaur creature that used to live in pre-Eternia, and in the vintage toy line he was available as practically a carry case for all your figures. You could stick about I think 6 figures on each side of its ribs, so on one side of the bad guys, on the other side the good guys, and you could store all the weapons of the figures into the mouth of the Battle Bones. He had his appearance in the mini comic book back then. He's also seen on the Place Eternia vintage poster, and some people would have more than one vintage Battle Bone, one to reserve to just put the bad guys on it, and the other one just to put the good guys on it. Now, there were some figures in the case of the vintage Battle Bones that couldn't fit on him because of their waist. If they had a very wide waist like Gygor, or a kind of waist that Drugstore has because of his wheel on his chest, then they wouldn't fit on those ribs. And the only thing about those ribs is that they were quite fragile. So if you try to push your figures really hard, the ribs would have a tendency, or the clips that represent the ribs would have a tendency to simply break. And it wouldn't be so simple to try and fix it. So, but it was a fun toy, and I pretty much liked it myself, and it took me many years before I was able to get one. But in the 2000X cartoon series, they released an updated version of Battle Bones, which is the one I'm going to show you now. And that's the one that works really well with the classics. It works way better with the classics figures than with the 2000X He-Man figures. So here we go. The Battle Bones from the 2000X cartoon series in all its glory. He's quite more updated compared to the vintage one, but he has the same function, to be a carry case for all your figures. He would fit 4 figures on each side. So here you could store the weapons in his drawers. Let me just show you. So here we have a bunch of weapons here. It's some of it is Tilas or Wundars and such, and all you really have to do, put these weapons in here. You can store quite a large number of them. Now, not every weapon will fit well, only the ones that are not extremely long. So the swords, battle axes, shields, laser guns, laser rifles, and stuff like that. So as you can see, there they are, fitting right in his mouth. And all you have to do to secure them is close the mouth. So there you go. Now, on this side I put a couple of figures to just show you how it really works. As you can tell, I can fit female characters like Tila, I can fit Ular, I can fit Wundar. And again, the same rule as with the vintage Battle Bones. You can fit only the classics figures that do not have a very thick waist. So, sorry Gwildor, again, you cannot fit on one of these. And majority of the females, yes, they can, and majority of the guys can fit as well. Now, of course, if they have some kind of a bulky armor that goes all the way down to the furry pants, then you probably won't be able to fit it. But if you remove the armor, then again you can pretty much fit them very snugly into the clips. The clips look like this, and the clip is a little bit thicker plastic, and if you try to put it in by force, again, I wouldn't recommend that for the same reason as the vintage one, because it would easily break yet again. So you just gotta have a bit of patience to just slowly clip them in, and the same thing goes when you're trying to pull them off. or to remove them. Now on this other side I put some of the bad guys as an example. So we have a Gore and Skeletor. So they can also fit quite well, and of course the female such as Evelyn would fit in it just fine. Again, Dragstore would be one of the bad guys who wouldn't be really able to fit here. But anyway, this is the kind of creature that you could easily use for your classics figures because it fits really well with them. Now I have also one more thing to show here, as long as I can get this to work. Oh, there we go. You can unclip the tail, and the tail just goes pulling it to the back, or if you want to lock it in and make it into a handle, then all you have to do is just push it a little bit forward and clip it right here in this area, which is, let me try and show you, which is right here, and clip it in. Once it clicks, then it's locked in, and then you use his tail to use it as a handle, and then you practically carry them away. Compared to the vintage one, where it had only just two loopholes on his spine where you put your fingers and then you just carry it that way. So that's Battle Bonds for you. The Classics carry case, and mind you, he wasn't made for the Classics line. He was made for the 2000X line, but as I said, and as you can tell, he fits really well with the Masters of the Universe Classics. I highly recommend it. So anyway, that's all of the ones I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope you enjoyed this, and catch you guys next time. Bye.